Hello and welcome back to Through the Trapdoor. I'm Katie.
And I'm Emily.
And we're going to read some Harry Potter fan fiction.
We're in chapter 12.
I can't believe it's almost over.
One chapter left after this.
I know.
So what happened last time?
They went to Diagon Alley. Will and Al got all of their books after Teddy broke up the mob that was trying to attack them in the Leaky Cauldron. We found out Teddy was an Auror.
Which is, I feel like it's a good career path for him.
Exactly, following in his mom's footsteps. They put all of their books that they purchased into Harry's wallet that he can rummage shoulder deep in.
Yep.
And now they're going to go get their wands. Woo! Yeah, I think that's pretty much the gist.
Yeah, I think it's everything that happened. All right, chapter 12. A wand. Will still couldn't believe it. He was going to have a magic wand, with which he could do untold magic. It was all too surreal to actually be happening. Come on, Will. The young blonde wizard looked at his friend, who was eagerly trying to pull Will down the alley. The young Dursley boy followed his friend as they passed the several shops, smiling happily. So what are we looking for in wands? Do we need to get student wands, or... Will trailed off as Al started to chuckle. Suddenly, Will felt very foolish in front of his wizard-born friend. Sorry. But the smaller Potter boy just smiled. There's nothing to be sorry for. You haven't grown up in the wizarding world like Dad and I have.
Except your dad didn't grow up in the wizarding world, but that's okay.
Will stopped his friend. Your dad didn't grow up in the wizarding world.
Wait for my friend to keep reading.
Please hold for the text, Katie.
My bad.
No, it's fine. I feel like I do the same thing to you sometimes. Will could remember a lot, and he certainly remembered what his dad had confessed to the family about Harry's childhood with them. And if there was one thing he knew, it was that his father's family had not been magical until Will had received his letter. Al looked at the blonde, clearly confused. What do you mean? It was at this point that Will had to look past Al and watch Harry, who was already halfway down Diagon Alley. Had Harry actually kept his childhood a secret from his family? Will certainly couldn't judge him if he did. After all, until his birthday, Will's own father had kept his childhood a secret. But still, the fact that Harry had lied about his upbringing, said wizard turned and seeing that Al and Will were so far behind, called out to them, "Come along, you two, we've still got shopping to do." Al laughed, dragging Will behind them as they walked down the sidewalk. "We're coming, Dad." A passage of time. Dudley couldn't help but stare at the ancient-looking store beside Harry and his mother, not sure if he should be amazed or wary. The shop was perhaps the eyesore of the entire alley, making Petunia wrinkle her nose in disgust. Sparing a glance at Harry, Dudley could see a warm smile spreading across the wizard's face. Although Dudley had no idea why Harry was so happy to see the dusty shop, the shop's gold lettering was almost non-existent, but the older Dursley man could make out the words, Ollivanders, makers of fine wands since 382 BC. 382 BC? Dudley's eyes almost popped out of his skull. Surely this shop hasn't been open for over 2,000 years. Dudley almost opened his mouth to dispute the store's age. But after all Dudley had witnessed and experienced with the wizarding world, suddenly the idea of a 2,000-year-old business didn't seem so outlandish.
Yeah, it doesn't really seem that weird.
No. I am kind of surprised that Ollivander is still making wands and he didn't pass it along to someone else.
Well, we know that Ollivander is just his last name.
True. See, at this point I'm just assuming they're going to see the same Ollivander that sold Harry his wand.
Well, of course, I think they would. I think this Ollivander would be doing it until the day he died.
Yeah, maybe.
I feel like he would. The way he loved Juan so much.
True. Petunia snorted. "This place is filthy," she muttered through pursed lips. And Dudley had trouble disagreeing. The place looked like it hadn't been cleaned in years. The dust had long since coated the display window, which held a single wand that had been placed on a pillow that may have once been purple, but after the years of fading had turned a yellowing pink color. Harry gave a small chuckle, reminding the two Dursleys of the older wizard's presence. "You should learn not to base your judgments on appearance." It seemed like Harry never ceased to show Dudley that he had so much more growing to do compared to his younger cousin. "Harry's like, what, 2-3 months younger than you? Like,
Calm down.
calm down, Dudley." Dudley should have been frustrated, but he wasn't. Maybe he was growing in his own way. Whoa. Dudley turned his eyes to Will, who had finally caught up with them, Al by his side. Will was looking at the ancient shop with wide eyes, bright and overjoyed. Harry smiled. "All right, Al, I'm giving you the money. You two take your time in there. We'll meet you outside Uncle George's shop." Albus smiled. "All right, Dad." The dark-haired boy turned to Will. "Come on. Let's go get our wands." Dudley had a chuckle as his son was nearly dragged into the shop by Al.
Love it.
"We aren't going with them?" Petunia asked. Harry shook his head. "Not this time. There's something about getting a wand that a wizard should do by himself."
I agree.
Yeah,
It's a very personal moment.
it really is.
Very personal moment.
"Why are we in here by ourselves?" Will asked as he looked around the dusty shop. He could understand why his grandmother would want to avoid the dirty shop. She'd probably get the urge to clean. But his dad? Al rolled his eyes as he sat down on what Al considered to be a very unstable chair. Dad has this notion that getting a wand is something a wizard should do on his own. He says it's an intimate process that doesn't need spectators. The green-eyed boy stifled a laugh. When he told Mom that, she called him an overzealous romantic. They actually argued over it when James got his Hogwarts letter, but Mom finally decided to humor him.
I love that. Ginny calling Harry an overzealous romantic is perfect.
Fantastic.
Just absolutely perfect.
I love it. Will knit his brow. Why is it an intimate process? For some reason, any phase with the word intimate just seemed dirty to him. But as Al opened his mouth, a voice interrupted. I thought I would be seeing another Potter boy in my shop soon." The blonde wizard turned to look at the shop owner and tried to find a word to describe him besides bizarre. The man's white hair showed no signs of thinning, and his gray eyes stared piercingly down at the two boys. Al sighed. "Yes, Mr. Ollivander, another Potter boy." The owner, Mr. Ollivander, Will now knew, watched Al with interest. "I remember when your father came into the shop. Holly, 11 inches, with a phoenix feather. Very supple, very, very special." Will could see Al sag into the chair at the mention of his father. "Then there was your brother a few years ago. Vine, 12 1/4 inch, with a unicorn hair. Very good for transfiguration work." The aging man seemed to have noticed Will. "Now, I don't believe I've seen you before. Muggle-born, I presume." Will gulped, stealing a look at Al before answering. Yes, Will Dursley." Will wasn't sure if he was supposed to shake the man's hand or not. Luckily, Al stepped in. "We're distant cousins. Dad brought Will with us for shopping for Hogwarts." Will could see a fire ignite in Ollivander's eyes. "Indeed. Well, Mr. Dursley, perhaps we can make a wizard out of you yet." The elderly man waved his own wand, and before Will knew it, he was attacked by an enchanted measuring tape. Ollivander looked through his several shelves of inventory. "Do you have any idea which is your wand arm?" No, you wouldn't know that. Perhaps, do you know which hand you write with?" Will stared cross-eyed at the measuring tape as it measured his nostrils. "Well, I'm actually left-handed." The blonde shot a dirty look at Al, who was enjoying himself watching as Will battled with his measurements. I feel like it would be the most awkward thing is to have this magical measuring tape measuring your nostrils.
Right, when you're like, I'm trying to answer questions, oh my.
Indeed. Ollivander suddenly returned with a long box from the many shelves. The tape measure then dropped to the floor. I would just like to question, what is the measuring tape actually doing other than, like, distracting people?
I know.
Okay, do tell.
So, the length of a wizard's wand is determined by the height that they will be when they reach adulthood. So, the measuring tape can predict how tall they're going to be.
Oh. Interesting.
Yeah.
That's a fancy measuring tape.
It is. I don't know where. I think I read that on either Harry Potter Wiki or on Pottermore.
That would make sense. What you need to realize, Mr. Dursley, is that no witch or wizard ever picks his wand. The wand always chooses the wizard. Will could feel his heart stop at this statement. Each wand is unique, and you never get as good results if you use another wizard's wand. With that, Ollivander took the dark wand out of its box. Try this Cocobolo. 10 inches with dragon heartstring. Great for dueling. Will took the wand and gripped it. Well, go on. Give it a wave then, boy. The blond boy blushed, ignoring Al's smirk, waved the wand about. But he had barely started when Ollivander snatched the wand from his hand. Definitely not. The old man was already back in his supply of wands before Will had even realized what was happening. Al was trying his best not to laugh as Ollivander returned. All right, give this one a go. Walnut, 9.5 inches, with a phoenix feather, slightly bendy. Will gave the wand a go, only to have it snatched out of his hand again by the old man, and so the process began to form a cycle. It seemed like every wand that Will tried just wasn't a right fit. And as each wand was rejected, Will couldn't help but fear maybe he wasn't really a wizard and there had been a mistake.
No mistake. It just takes some time.
Yeah. You don't always find one right away. This time I'm sure we've got the one. Cherry, 12.5 inches, with a phoenix feather. I'm willing to bet my trade as a wand maker. Will wished he could have been as confident as Ollivander as he took hold of the wand. Immediately, Will felt warmth in his fingers that he'd never felt before, as red and gold sparks began to shoot from the end of the wand. Whoa. Ollivander smirked. Will was walking on air as he and Al exited the shop, clutching the box with his wand close to himself. Al also had his wand, 11 3/4 inches, with unicorn hair. For some reason, Al had seemed surprised when his wand was made of yew, but for the life of him, Will had no idea why. Where are we going now? The blonde asked, happily. Al chuckled. We're going to Weasley Wizard Wheezes.
Wait, well, what Voldemort's wand was made of yew.
Was it?
Yeah. Yew and a unicorn. Phoenix feather.
Mm-hmm.
So that could be why.
Maybe. I feel like yew's probably pretty common though, isn't it?
Maybe.
I'm sure that the wood itself probably has some meaning, but I don't know a lot about wand lore. The two boys smiled as they began walking. What kind of shop is that? Will couldn't help but ask. At this, Al all but grinned. It's the best wizarding joke shop ever. My Uncle George actually founded the shop while he was still at Hogwarts. They've got everything there, like canary creams and tongue toffees and headless hats, and Will smiled softly as his friend rambled on and on about the joke shop, already excited for what was inside. Maybe he could get something to show Mari, or his mum. There you two are. Al and Will both spotted Harry with Dudley and Petunia at the same time, waving happily. Apparently, while Will and Al had been getting their wands, Harry had taken Dudley and Petunia to Florian Fortescue's ice cream parlor, because the three adults were contentedly licking away at their ice cream. Dad! Will all but ran to his father. I've got a wand now. I feel like I accidentally make Will sound like how I imagine Draco would sound.
Yes, I was literally thinking the same thing. I was also thinking like, I wish I had some ice cream.
Also that. Dudley smiled at his son. "Let me see it." Eagerly, Will showed his father his newly acquired wand. It's 12.5 inches long, made of cherry wood, and has a phoenix feather in it. Although Dudley had no idea of the significance of any of the things his son had just said, he played the part of the supportive parent well. "That's great, Will." Harry smiled at the two before looking at Al. "What about you, Al?" "It's you." Will was surprised to see Al so quiet, almost shy about telling his father about his wand. The older Potter raised an eyebrow. "That's interesting. Hey, why don't you show Will the joke shop?" Al smiled at his dad before once again dragging Will mercilessly behind him into the shop, with the adults following close behind him. Dudley had never seen such a bold, vibrant shop in all of his life. It certainly was a far cry from Ollivander's dusty shop, both in color and noise. It seemed as if everything had become a moving part or made some sort of noise, or changed some sort of color. It was overwhelming, to say the least. Beside him, Harry chuckled. "It's a lot, isn't it?" The older blonde had no trouble agreeing with his cousin. "Why do you like this place?" Harry began laughing. "My brother-in-law actually founded and owns this place." "Really?" Dudley raised his eyebrows. "That's impressive." "Why, thank you." Dudley almost jumped out of his skin as a strange voice behind him spoke. The Dursley man spun on the spot and almost bumped right into a magenta-clad, red-haired wizard. "Oi, nice to see you again, Harry." The red-haired wizard smiled at Harry, who was trying to keep from laughing at Dudley's shocked expression. "It's nice to see you too, George." Harry smiled. "Have you taken Fred shopping for Hogwarts yet?" The redhead rolled his eyes. "No, Harry, we just left him to whine and moan until he drove us bonkers. He barely had his letter a week before we had to take him shopping." It was then George turned his attention to Dudley. "I didn't know you had friends outside of the family, Harry. How rude. Keeping him all to yourself." George tutted at Harry disapprovingly. "Who's your mystery friend?" Harry cleared his throat awkwardly. George, this is my cousin Dudley." There was a good 10 seconds that George stared at Dudley. "No, he isn't." "Yes, he is." "No, he isn't. Your cousin was a fat git last time I saw him. A fat git who couldn't help but eat our supply of Tongue toffees." It was at this time that the pieces suddenly fell into place. The toffees, his tongue growing faster than he could imagine. Red-haired twins. Dudley groaned. "Oh no, it's you." George looked at Dudley, still debating if he believed Harry, as Dudley stared at George with wide eyes. "Don't go trying to get me to eat another one of those sweet things again." "Where has the other one gone? Is your twin hiding somewhere?" Both Harry and George fell deathly silent, looking at Dudley. Dudley was confused, to say the least, at how such a simple sentence could stop the conversation. "Oi, I'm over here, you blonde git." Dudley spun around, trying to find the source of the voice. He had made a complete circle twice already, and still hadn't found who called out to him. "On the wall, you ninny." The blonde man stared at where the voice came from. A giant portrait on the wall. What you staring at?" The portrait of Fred Weasley crossed his arms. "Didn't your mother tell you it's rude to stare, or was she too busy stuffing you with food?" Dudley was at a loss. "You're a painting? Well, George didn't think I would have made a very good sculpture." As Fred began to move in his painting, Dudley thought for sure that he had gone off the deep end. "But where's the real you? Like him?" Dudley felt foolish, pointing dumbly at George while he asked his question. Fred paused, posing in a pondering position. "You mean where's my body? I suppose it's in a cemetery somewhere. I never bothered to ask. It's so awkward asking people." His body? Dudley was slightly unnerved at Fred's choice of words. He made it sound like his mom lost a brother. Al didn't like to talk about it. Ginny even lost a brother. Red hair, twins, Weasley boys. Dudley's eyes widened. He was talking to a dead man. "Oi, don't go passing out on me. You haven't even had anything from here." Fred seemed to have no problem with the fact that he was dead, still having a conversation as if he was alive. Harry placed a hand on Dudley's shoulder. "Fred, be nice. Dudley's taken this whole magic thing quite well, if you ask me." George snorted. "Yes, he did seem to enjoy those toffees, didn't he?" "That he did," Fred added, "although he does look much smaller from here." Dudley crossed his arms. "I've lost the weight." "And Harry's lost his mind. Really, Harry, bringing a muggle into Diagon Alley? Are you trying to get thrown in the loony bin?" Fred and George's ability to finish each other's sentences seemed to transcend the grave, unnerving Dudley indefinitely. Harry, on the other hand, simply rolled his eyes. "Dudley's here for the same reason I am." The dark-haired wizard pointed across the shop where Al and Will were showing Petunia a pygmy puff. "Dudley's son Will is going to be starting at Hogwarts with Al and Fred." Harry stole a glance at Dudley's expression. "George's son, Fred the Second, as opposed to Fred the First." Harry pointed to the painting. Dudley wished he could have understood. He really did. "He has a son, then?" "That must mean he had a wife." Both of the twins shared a look. "Brave woman." Both decided in unison. "Very brave. Or stupid."
A little bit of both.
Yeah. Dudley clenched his fist. "I love my wife and children very much, thank you." "Guys, be nice, please," he pleaded with the twins. "Diane is a great woman. Ginny gets along really great with her. And Will and Al are already great friends. Please just be nice." There was another moment where there was silence as the twins shared a look. "We'll have to wait and see, won't we?" "We'll be nice, if you be nice." Dudley, Fred, and George seemed to stare at one another, waiting for some sort of non-verbal agreement to be made. Luckily for Dudley, the twins seemed to be satisfied on said agreement. George chuckles. "Well, I guess I'll see you on platform 9 3/4 then, shall I?" Harry sighed in relief. "All right, let's see what Al and Will have gotten into, shall we?" As Harry dragged Dudley across the room, Dudley couldn't help but wonder. Platform 9 3/4. End of chapter 12.
I like that they made Fred a painting in the shop.
Yes.
So he could still interact with customers, because I feel like
this is something that would have happened.
it definitely is something that would have happened. And it's also, I feel like, proper to the spirit of Fred, because then he can continue on.
Yes. Do you know if George actually named his son Fred?
Yes, he did.
He did? I was going to say, I thought he did, but I couldn't remember for
Yes,
sure.
George and Angelina had a son named Fred.
Alright guys, thank you so much for joining us. Please subscribe and leave a review on iTunes.
A nice one. And you can follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Through the Trapdoor 16 and on our Twitter at The Trapdoor 16.
Because Through the Trapdoor was too long for Twitter.
Yep.
And you can email us at throughthetrapdoor16@gmail.com with any story suggestions, or if there's anything you think that we need to see, whether it's a meme or another fan fiction, or if you have anything to say to us.
Bye.
Bye.